Welcome to the first of a series of videos that I'm putting together in order to explain my lifetime hourly averaging tax system. And I've been meaning to create videos about this for a very long time, and I've just decided to just to create something, get something up onto the internet. We've currently got the coronavirus outbreak is expanding around the UK and the world, and that's partly inspired me for several reasons to just get on and do this. And I think I've always imagined that this would be something I need to spend lots and lots of time on, and have great quality production values and all that sort of thing. But actually, I think it's best just to get something out there, and I think it'll really help, hopefully, to spread the word and help people to understand as well, because I've got my book and I've got my blog, but a lot of people find things much easier to understand if they're talked through it. And so I've just put together a series of slides, and so in the next videos that I've got planned to go alongside this one is just to explain some of the basics of the system, and then I've got some examples of some imaginary people living under this hourly averaging system, and how the tax system would work for them. But actually, there's loads of other topics. If this goes well and I find the time in the future, lots of other topics that I could cover as well. And here are some ideas. So when you're thinking about the tax system, I just thought I'd flag up in this introductory video that there's different ways that you can look at it, and there's different perspectives you can take. You can think of it in terms of, you're a tax collector. How do you work out how much tax is due for a particular person? You're the government. What do you want the tax system to achieve? And obviously, from the perspective of a taxpayer, the tax system looks a certain way. They're concerned about how it's going to impact them and what decisions they should make, bearing in mind the different tax implications of the different decisions that they might make. And it's also going to affect employers. It's also going to affect certain professionals and the finance industry, and criminals as well are going to take account of how the tax system works. But another perspective is to look at it from that of the society as a whole, and say, what does the tax system do for society? And maybe that might be the way that the government looks at it. It could be how we look at it as citizens, and that's probably as it should be. In terms of explaining my particular tax proposal, it's just a very different way of thinking about tax, and that's why I'm putting together this video series, because I think that it does take a bit of time probably for people to get used to thinking in a different way about how tax could work. So unfortunately, that requires me to present it in a fairly abstract way. So that's what I'll do in the next video, but then in the video after that I'll go through some examples, so hopefully that will really make it much easier to understand when we talk about the examples. But I think I've been trying to think of a way of avoiding the abstract, but I don't think that's really a good idea. It might be possible just to do it all by examples, but certainly some people will just understand the abstract. That will be fine for them, but I think probably a mixture of the kind of abstract and the examples will help. And I'm just flagging up here in the introduction that I might be switching perspectives as we go through these slides, and some of the slides will maybe focus more on the perspective of the taxpayer, but we can also think about it from these other perspectives as well. So what makes a good tax system? I thought that would be something that I could cover in this introduction, and I'm not going to talk about it at great length. I'll point you towards Adam Smith's famous principles in his book, A Wealth of Nations, and people often still point back to these principles. There's some good advice in there for thinking about tax reform, and I won't go into those here, but these things are worth taking into account. Overall, though, I tend to think that the best way to judge the tax system is in terms of distributive justice, and I'm also a political philosopher, and I've written about justice and taxation, or one or the other separately, and that just seems like the right way to judge our societies, the aspects of society that tax relates to particularly. And the problem you might think that arises immediately with that is that there's quite a lot of theories of justice out there, and there's disagreements within each of the theories as well. And so we might just sort of feel a bit paralyzed here about what to do about taxation, given all of the disagreement about distributive justice. I'm one kind of egalitarian, let's say, but I'll disagree with other kinds of egalitarian, and there's all these different theories here that I've listed here. So I'm not going to go about trying to defend one form or the other. These are just arguments that go on. But I do think that they often share a lot in common, and it's not universal. Particularly some libertarians, some consequentialists might be more in favour of the free market, some desertists might as well. But with those rare exceptions aside, I think that most people would accept that economic efficiency should be a concern when we're thinking about the economy. We want it to function well. We want it to create the goods that people want and that people need, and so that should be a factor to consider. And for the most part as well, for various different reasons, depending on the theory that you have, you would want the tax system to be progressive as well. You would want it to be taxing the well-off more than the badly off, and you'd probably want to even be in a capitalist economic system. You'd want to be actually boosting the situation of the worst off. And actually, my tax proposal is not just tax, it's also a sort of negative tax for the badly off, which acts as a boost to them as well. And the tax system is obviously one of the major levers in making the economy more progressive than it would be if you had a free market without government intervention. Government regulation is justifiable on lots of grounds of efficiency as well as progressivity, but yeah, tax clearly has a role to play in that. It can have a role to play in efficiency as well, maybe if you're taxing things that are going to lead to inefficiencies. But generally speaking, there's this concern that actually taxes will reduce the efficiency of the economy overall, because they'll distort people's decisions, they'll give people less strong incentives to produce the things and work in the ways that will benefit other people more. So often people think, and for fairly good reasons in some ways, that these two aims for the tax system conflict somewhat with one another. if you go all out on progressivity, then you're probably going to end up having a less efficient economy. And similarly, if you go out all for efficiency, then you might not have a very equal society or a very fair society at the end of it, or something like that. So these are the two things that I think we should be aiming for. But in many cases, taxes that do well on one front might do less well on the other. So that makes it a difficult business to be in, proposing tax reforms with these aims. And my claim about hourly averaging, and this is something that is a hypothesis really, it seems to be the case to me, that this proposal can do things that no other proposal can do, because it's a capitalist-based economic system. Production is all done by private firms, or they could be charities, or they could be other kinds of firms, but I'm not proposing that the state takes over all of the production or anything like that. But the net amount that everyone gets isn't at all based on free market incomes. Instead, it's based on this hourly averaging calculation for everybody. And I think that when you go about taxation in this hourly averaging way, you can really be much more progressive in your tax rates than you could be with any other tax system, without sacrificing the efficiency that you would get with such high tax rates and progressive tax rates if you calculated it any other way. And also, I think it's a system that shouldn't necessarily be impinging on liberties in the way that maybe some progressive proposals you might worry that they do. I mean, this is a huge issue. Maybe this would be something to discuss further in a video way down the line. But this is my hypothesis about hourly averaging, that it can do something that other ways of taxing just can't do. So I'd like other people to sort of have a look at this and see whether they agree with me on that. Find out why not. So thanks for your interest in the topic, and just end by saying that I'd really appreciate any support that you'd like to offer, and if you have any questions about it, then do add those in the comments or send them directly to me. Any thoughts about the proposal, any suggestions to change it in any way or to improve it, or suggestions really about how I can better explain it or better present it, and any help you can give in that process of spreading word about it and that sort of thing would really just be really welcome. So thanks very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the video series. I don't know how many videos we'll end up having, but hopefully a few more at least. And yeah, thanks for listening, and I look forward to your thoughts on this.